Welcome to the channel. In this video series, I'm going to be giving you the no BS guide to sharpening. If you're new to woodworking or you've been woodworking for a while and just can't seem to figure it out, stick with me because I'm going to give you a simple and straightforward guide so that way you can sharpen your irons quick and get back to work. So to start, I want to break down the video series. So in video number 1, I'm going to be going over the different types of sharpening media that you have to choose from. There's sandpaper and diamond stones and water stones and so on and so forth. That's what we'll review in video number 1. Video number 2 is going to be about the different grits because I know that's a huge argument. And then we're also going to be talking about primary bevels and micro bevels and what that all means. Video number 3 is going to be about the different angles. So when it comes to your chisels, what angle should they be at? Your plane blades, what angle should they be at? We'll review that in video 3. Video number 4 is going to be showing you guys how to freehand sharpen, and I'm also going to show you guys how to use a jig. Because even if you learn how to freehand sharpen, you still need a jig to redo the primaries, which we'll talk about. So, stick with me through this series, and trust me, you're going to learn more than you thought you would. Don't forget to like and subscribe! This is video number 1 in the series, and we're going to be covering the different types of sharpening media that you have to choose from. Now, there's a ton of different options out there, and if you're like me, when I started woodworking, I went onto YouTube and watched, I can't even tell you how many different videos to try to figure out, well, which one do I even choose? So what I want to do is go through and show you each one. But let me say this, they all work. They can all take a flat side and a beveled side and make a point. Now, there's pros and cons to each one, and that's what I want to review with you, so to help you make that decision. The other thing is you don't need all of them, but it might be good to have a mix of them, and I'll explain that as well. So the first one I want to review with you is carborundum. These are the stone, or they also called Silicon Carbide stones. When you go onto Amazon, these are the cheapest one that you can buy. Typically they're double-sided. They have a coarse side and a fine side. Now these ones, they are the cheapest option, but they're not super effective. Depending on the type of steel you have, so like the newer planes and irons that are coming out right now, they really struggle on these. So like if you look at the Veritas, the PMV11, even A2, I've struggled to sharpen the A2 irons on here. Now if it's the old Stanley, the old laminated steels, this might work for you. But you can't just buy this stone and be done, because this stone gets out of flat very fast. If you can tell, can you guys see the back of this? It's very out of flat. So what I need to do now is I bought this stone, I've used it, it's out of flat, I need to flatten it. So with that, I would either need to get sandpaper or a diamond plate, something that's flat, to rub this over to flatten it again. So this is, I would say, my least preferred method just because it's not super universal and you still need something else to flatten it, but it is the cheapest. So if you're on a limited budget, go for this one, see if it works with the steel you have. Make sure you get some sandpaper, glue it down to a flat board or a piece of glass, and then go for it. The next one I want to review with you is sandpaper. So this is what I use pretty much on a regular basis. As you can tell, it's getting pretty old and I need to replace it. So sandpaper is really cheap to start because you can go to your local hardware store, buy a couple different grits, glue it down onto something, and go about your day. Now, in the long run, it starts getting expensive because as this wears out, you need to replace it. The other thing is, when I buy this sandpaper, I buy it in rolls, and it's really tough to keep it flat because when you glue it down onto the board, as you can see, this side is lifting up. I don't know if you guys can see that in the video, but it's not flat here and it's not flat here. So when I use this, I have to stay in the middle. Because if you get far to the side, that's going to roll your edge over, especially when you're flattening the backs. It's really easy to do that on sandpaper, but it's quick. It works very fast, especially when you go to like the coarser grits. And then I think a lot of people know the scary sharp method. You can get really high grits in sandpaper. Just know that you're going to have to replace them more often, and you want to make sure that they stay perfectly flat on whatever you have them glued down to. I still use sandpaper to flatten the backs because it's the fastest. So when I flatten the backs of my chisels, flatten the backs of my plane blades, this is the fastest method to do that on. The next one I want to talk to you about is diamond plates. So diamond plates is a really good option for beginners because you don't have to spend a lot of money on them. I know that you're going to look on Amazon and there's a ton of different brands out there that are super expensive, but you don't need to go with those expensive brands. There's some really good makers out there that sell these for like 20 bucks. When you get it, just make sure that it's flat. If it's flat, you're good to use it. It's going to work still. it might just not last you as long as those other brands do. So if you do have the money and you want to invest in them right away, go ahead and get the ones that are just single grit stones. This one's a double-sided. It's a 1000 and a 300. Now that's pretty much all I use when it comes to a diamond plate. If you do want to go into higher grits, we'll talk about grits in video number 2. If you want to go to higher grits, just know with diamond plates, they don't get super high. Usually people mix them with different types of sharpening media. So they might have a diamond plate and then switch to a water stone or ceramic stone as their finishing stone. But diamond plates are still a great option. You don't have to invest a lot right away. They stay flat, which is a huge bonus to newer woodworkers because you don't need a whole other system to try to keep the stones flat. The only other thing that I'll mention about diamond plates is you want to make sure that they stay clean. So this one right now it's pretty dirty. That's going to make it slow down. It's going to make it not cut as efficiently. So you can just take an eraser. If you have like a normal pink school eraser, you can hit it on there, and what that does is it cleans it up. So here, let me show you that. See how this side is getting clean and that side's still dirty? So this eraser cleans that up. So keep an eraser handy with them. If you go with the Trend brand, I mean, I've had some issues with Trend before, so make sure you get a good one. If you don't get a good one, return it through their warranty. Theirs comes with an eraser. The other thing, or I guess the last thing I want to mention about diamond plates is I found that they don't work with all steel. So when I use PMV 11, which is the Veritas, like they're supposed to be their superior metal type, they're really slow on diamond plates. Now I've talked to some other guys that have no issues with it at all, but from what I've found, it's slow on these plates. The next kind I want to talk to you about is water stones. Now, I don't have one handy because it's my least preferred next to carborundum. Water stones, a lot of people love them, and I'm not dissing them at all. They just have more cons than what I want to deal with. So with water stones, you have to soak them in water until the bubbles stop, and then it's ready to be used. And then sometimes when you're in the middle of sharpening, you got to throw it back in there if you see that it starts drying out. The other issue I had with them is they come out of flat very fast. I was sharpening, I think it was like a 3/4 chisel, and I could already see that it was indenting it. And in the middle of sharpening, I had to stop, flatten the stone, and put it in water again, and then get back to sharpening. But they do work very fast. So that's one of those pros and cons that you got to weigh for you is they work fast. You can get them cheap, but they could also be very expensive. My understanding too is that if you're using Japanese chisels, you have to use water stones. Now I haven't looked into that because I've never used Japanese steel, but that's something to keep in mind if you're going with the Japanese style of woodworking. Now the other thing is when it comes to water stones, flattening them. So as I had mentioned with the carborundum stones, you need something to flatten them with. So you can use sandpaper if you have sandpaper on a flat surface. I use a granite plate with some silicon carbide powder. That's a little bit, not a little bit, that's a big investment. So that can be something that you can do later down the line. But if you have sandpaper, glue it down to something flat and you can flatten the water stone on there, throw it back in the water, and then get to sharpening again. The next one is going to be ceramic stones. Ceramic stones are really close to water stones, but they're splash and go. You don't need to soak them in the water. You can spray some water on there and then get to sharpening. But you do have to flatten these, just not as often as water stones. I feel like they hold a little bit better. But with ceramic stones, I've learned that you have to dress them. So for example, this one's a 320 grit. When I notice it's not cutting as efficiently, then I take some sandpaper, I rough it up, and then I go back to sharpening. To me, that's not a big deal because these cut really fast and these cut really efficiently, in my opinion. I like them better than water stones. I would say they cut as fast as water stones. They just stay flat longer and you don't need to soak them. So that's the biggest difference between those two, but they're really close to each other in, I guess, types. I've never tried the Sharpening glass ceramic stones. A lot of the guys that I talked to said that normal ceramic stones are no different. The biggest difference between the Sharpening glass is it's attached to glass. These are also Sharpening, but they're the Karamaku, I think how you pronounce it. I'll put links to all this stuff down below. I like these ones, but they can get expensive. Even the lower grit ones are expensive, higher grit are expensive, so these are an investment. But I guess if I had to choose, I would say that I like these ones a lot for lower grits, for like the rough work stuff. if I'm not using sandpaper. The last kind that I want to talk about here are natural stones. So these are literally rocks that somebody mined who knows how many years ago. This is what the old guys used to use. So like the original woodworkers, I guess you would say, they would go out, they would get a rock, flatten it, put some oil on it, and they would sharpen. So this is a leopard washita, if you can see the spots on it. Natural stones are my favorite just because they're rocks, and they're pretty neat. But they're expensive. That's a whole rabbit hole that you can dive into. They take a lot to flatten, so if you're going to be using natural stones, you have to get a granite plate and silicone powder. I've heard of people using diamond plates, but I don't really know how, because all it's going to do is destroy your diamond plate. So if you're going to go the natural route, just know that it's a big money investment. You have to get a granite plate with silicon carbide powder that you can flatten these stones on. You also have to dress them. So like I mentioned with the ceramic stones, you hit it with sandpaper. I do the same things on these. So I hit it with like 80 grit sandpaper, 90 grit sandpaper, and then I go back to sharpening. The other thing with natural stones is you can't really get a super coarse grit. So when I started my deep dive down the rabbit hole into natural stones, I wanted one stone that was super coarse so I could throw away the sandpaper, the diamond plate, and the karamaku, the ceramic stone. That's not a thing. You can get it to be coarse for a little bit, but it's still a rock. So those little bits that you roughed up, they're gonna go away. So there really is no coarse option to these, but these make great finishing stones, which we'll dive into that a little bit more in the next video. So just to review with you guys, carborundum is the cheapest that you can possibly do, but you can't just buy that stone and be done. You have to get sandpaper or a diamond plate or something to flatten it because it gets out of flat very quickly. It's also not super effective with all tool steel, so that's something to keep in mind. Sandpaper is a great cheap option to get started as well. You just want to make sure that you have it on a super flat surface, and that if you do see any of the edges lifting up, that you're not getting near them, that you stay away and stay in the middle so you're not rolling over the edges. You also want to make sure that you pay attention to how hot that chisel is getting. Dip it in water, go back to sharpening, or wait until it cools down. In the long run, it will cost you a little bit more because you're buying sandpaper when you constantly have to replace these. Diamond plates, I'd say, are the easiest option for newer woodworkers. You can buy a couple of them, sharpen, and go about your day. They stay flat. You do want to make sure that you keep them clean. They can get very expensive, but they don't have to be. Again, check out the cheaper brands. Make sure that it's flat. Use that. If it lasts you a year, then maybe just invest in a different kind, or you buy one once a year. Water stones, they work very quickly. They get your irons very sharp, but you have to soak them in water until the bubbles stop, and you have to flatten them a lot. So to flatten them, you need sandpaper or a diamond plate or a granite plate. So you can't just buy the water stone and be done. Same thing with ceramic stones. I like ceramic stones a lot. You still have to flatten them. You have to have some way to flatten them. Sandpaper, diamond plate, granite plate. They are splash and go, so you can just spray water and go to town. You do need to dress them. So if you notice that it starts cutting slower, hit it with some sandpaper and then it'll pick back up. They stay flatter longer than water stones. They can get super expensive. Again, even the lower grits are expensive. They're an investment to get into. And then natural stones. I don't recommend them for beginners. They are a lot of work, and they're their own beasts. So if you decide to go with natural stones, I'd say wait a little bit. Try ceramic stones or diamond plates or sandpaper first. See if you like that, and then maybe as you get more experience, you'll want to invest in natural stones, but that is the biggest investment. And again, I don't recommend it for beginners. So the last thing I want to review with you guys is the different options that you have. If you guys kind of caught on to a theme here, it seems like you always need sandpaper. And it's kind of true. So sandpaper is the best at flattening the backs and resetting the primaries. So no matter what, I still recommend getting set up with sandpaper. The lower grits typically aren't as expensive, so I'm fine with doing that. I'm fine with using the sandpaper to flatten the backs and reset my primaries. Now, you don't have to do that often. When you buy a new set of something, yes, you have to flatten the back, but it's not like you have to do that every single time you sharpen. Same with the primary bevels. Once you have the primary bevel set, you don't have to do that for quite a while. So get a couple low grits of sandpaper and just keep them on hand. Now, you can do the same thing with diamond plates, not as fast and not as cheap. So you can get some really coarse diamond plates out there, but you're probably gonna pay $100 or more for just those coarse grits. So, I recommend sandpaper for flattening the backs and redoing the primaries, which again, you won't do often. From there, you can go to a diamond plate or you can go to the ceramic stones. The cheapest option would be the diamond plate. Get one that's a 300 to 1000 or just get a fine grit, hit it on that, and then you'd hit the strop and you'd call it a day. So, combinations, sandpaper and diamond plates, sandpaper and ceramic stones. That's what I would recommend. Diamond plates are cheaper, ceramic's a little bit more expensive. But again, both of them are gonna work. So, if you looked at those pros and cons and say you don't like the idea of having ceramic stones because you have to flatten them, that's fine. If you don't like the idea of diamond plates, I guess because they can get expensive, that's fine. I really don't see a downside to diamond plates because you can get them for a good price. When you start getting into higher grits, if you want to go to higher grits, diamond plates don't go that high, but you don't need to. So we'll talk about that in the next video. But I hope this helped you guys make a decision on which media to choose. Again, you don't need all of them. I don't recommend natural stones. I don't recommend carborundum. I recommend always having sandpaper and then choosing ceramic stones or diamond plates and sticking with it and getting good at it. So the next video is going to be on grit and micro bevels and primary bevels, so check that out when it's posted.